5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm John Miglosh for the Wisconsin DMA and the International Society for Strategic Marketing. I'm not sure quite where this one's going to go today, so let's have some fun. But first, in international news, McDonald's created clever visuals to celebrate Moving Day in Quebec. And this is great. You know, what I don't understand is how they got them on the trucks. You know, these big burgers to ride around town. No, that's not real burgers. That's that's an overlay, you know, printed on the back door of a truck so that it looks like you're looking at a burger sitting in a moving van that's driving down the street. But actually, it's French. It's just like painted on there. Now, if that's moving vans, if they got a moving van company, you know, and one of the challenges on Moving Day is, because Boston has a similar thing, they do it right before school starts, I think, and you got to register your moving van like months in advance because they're all used up. Everybody moves in the same day. You move out, you move in, and it kind of works, although it's kind of doesn't. You know, it got me to stay at Madison an extra semester because that's the way the leases work at a big university town. Anyway, I just thought it was cute, and it doesn't answer a lot of questions. Here's an interesting part. Facebook elaborates on its data portability measures. I've figured out how to upload videos to one of my main hosting platform that I've been using since the 90s, and the nice thing is when you click on them, they instantly play. So it's not click to get to the video or on YouTube or on Vimeo and then click to watch it. It just starts playing, which I really prefer. One less click, 50% improvement. I like that. So I'd like to be able to get all my videos off of Vimeo because I've now figured out a way to get rid of that $250 a year charge. But I'm not sure quite how to do it. But anyway, so Facebook is elaborating on its data portability measures. This is one of the measures that it's using to say that we're not a monopoly. We let people move over to Google Photos. I'm not sure how Google Photos works. I took a picture of my hibiscus plant, and my wife saw it without me sharing it or doing anything. I don't know. I don't know how that even worked. And I don't care either, to be honest. But it does stuff. I take a picture on what I think is just my camera, no upload, and all of a sudden it's shared somewhere else. And, be careful what you take pictures of. Remind Brett Favre. Anyway, so there's a bill pending, bipartisan bill that would mandate that big tech firms allow users to have the ability to port their data to different platforms. You know, I'm really a big believer in that because the cloud, I grew up in the 60s and 70s, and I remember the first time I saw my brother talking to the computer at Whitewater, which is about 45-minute drive away, and I said, how are you doing that? And he said, well, we're doing it with a telephone line and a modem, and we're sharing time on the computer with other users. So when the cloud came along, I asked him, what is a cloud? It sounds fantastic. He said, remember time sharing? That's what all it is. They're still hard drives. It's just somebody else owns them. And if they don't do what they're supposed to do, your stuff can be gone just as easily. And of course, we've had examples of that in the last few years where everything went down. So be careful where you store your data, and I always recommend pulling some down. And so I'm working on, I do think I have backups of everything I've ever uploaded to Vimeo because it had to start here somehow. But anyway, it's there's been a data transfer product or a project with Apple, Google, Microsoft, Twitter to find a common way for people to transfer. Now, of course, if you downloaded all your tweets, it won't necessarily work the same on Google Photo. Just telling you. Okay, so today I saw this article, SEO Stuck in Gender Inequality. Thanks, Lori Sullivan. And I wondered what it was about, and it starts off with saying that as female SEO professionals represent about 30% of the industry in 2015, and the percentage hasn't got much better. With the implication that if we got rid of more men or we added more women, either one, if the percentage were more equal, that would be better. But I, first of all, want to challenge that. Jordan Peterson, who I listen to pretty regularly, says that in the Scandinavian countries where there's absolutely no barriers to entry in any industry or any job profession, the difference between male and female jobs, and there's not a lot of gender stereotyping either up there, the difference is greater than the difference in countries where we deliberately try to manipulate. We try to make women into firefighters and into linemen for the county. Men, 90% of the on-work deaths are male. So women, I think, are smarter in the sense that they don't want those jobs. And men, for some reason, and I always love seeing these things on Twitter or Facebook or something, videos of guys up on the lines, hundreds of feet in the air, taking selfies and stuff. It's like, are you all nuts? Or skyscraper workers, or, there's, famous Brooklyn Bridge stories and Golden Gate Bridge stories of the people that built that stuff. And I'm pretty sure there weren't even a lot of women who wanted to. It's great. It's okay. It's great to have differences in interests. And, the story goes on, and interestingly, there was a study in 2012 where only 22% of SEO professionals were women, and it went up to 30.1 in 5 years. And so you could have written the headline, "Women in SEO improves 30%. Depends on what you want to skew or what you want to say. Now, the United States was worse than average, only 20% or so. And South America was the widest, but New Zealand and Australia, who you'd never think of as gender oppressed, were right down there with South America. 1% different. One of the other interesting things I found was the most comparable was in Africa. Okay? In Canada, 52%, only 52% men and 47% women. And it doesn't say what it is in Africa. It just says it was the smallest. So what does all this mean? Well, at the end it says, several females participating in the study said they think early gender stereotyping played a role. Now, I'm always curious about that because, my son and my daughters all played with dolls. My son played differently. He'd grab them by the legs and bang them on stuff. And I didn't teach him that. I didn't care what they did. The girls were very nurturing, and, my daughter, one of my daughters, who's probably the least gender stereotyped, was in sales, in credit card sales, and she was one of the top 30 or 40 people out of 1,000, and she was also the youngest. And I don't know what the percentage of male female was, but I think there were fewer women. And she got stressed and had some serious health issues, and when she's come through it, which she pretty much has, she's doing a lot better now, thank you. And now she's in healthcare, and she works with elderly, and she just loves it. They love her, and she loves them, and it's great. And I'm not saying she shouldn't do that, or she should, or that's gender stereotyping. I'm just saying she likes it better. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's all it is. Sorry. And like I said, I don't know where this is going to go today. Things come off the top of my head. But this was interesting. This is in Australia, and an excellent article about how worker algorithms are pulling the strings in management. And this is connected to this idea that we have to manipulate the diversity. We have to push it in a direction. that may be counter to nature, may be counter to people's inclination, but we can push it with algorithms. You bet you can. And he starts off, this is great, he starts off with, "I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that." Hal had that wonderful soothing voice. Hal was the computer in 2001: A Space Odyssey. And all of a sudden, the computer wasn't doing what the astronaut told him to. And it was scary. It's a scary movie. It's a fun movie. It's a scary movie. And we never thought we'd ever get to 2000. When I was a kid, we were raised under the shadow of the atomic bomb. So we partied and figured, well, that's a long ways away. That's 25 years or something. We'll never hit 2000. Yeah, here we are. We look like the makeup we put on to look old in the plays in high school. Anyway, so there's these self-learning algorithmic computer systems that are used in hiring, setting tasks, measuring productivity, evaluating performance, and even terminating employment. I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid you're being made redundant. And who do you tell? It reminds me of that movie Brazil, if you haven't ever seen it. It's an old movie. And I called on Oakley once with Elena from the U.S. Postal Service. It was hilarious. It was hilariously fun to go to the Oakley headquarters where they had a Jolly Roger flag flying, and it was patterned. It was actually the architecture and the design of the building were patterned after the movie Brazil. And it was hilariously funny. When you went to the front desk, the desk was about this high, and you could just barely see over it, barely see the receptionist. Which sends this message that you're really not welcome. The seats in the waiting area were like old fighter jet seats, which aren't upholstered. They're wire. It's all wire. But they fit really well, and they feel really comfortable, but they look like something out of a sci-fi movie. Yeah, it was really funny. Anyway, so in Brazil, there's some computer glitch, and a guy gets arrested for something, and there's just nobody to talk to because it's all AI. And the computer is sure that it didn't make a mistake, and nobody can tell the computer that it made a mistake. And I think the guy gets executed. The wife tries to track him down, but it's just it's like today. And nobody knows how these algorithms work. And Amazon's fulfillment center sets a pace for pickers. And it's not quite walking and not quite running. It's really fast walking. And I've seen interviews where they say it's not sustainable, but, a lot of people looking for work, and you can just keep cycling them. Awful. It's just awful. And they just hired like 200,000 more. So how do we figure out AI is determining your success in a job interview? I saw an article about a white guy in his 40s or something who had been part of Google's AI team, and he was like IBM, Google, and just an incredible resume. And I think he went out on his own for a while and then decided he preferred working on a team. And he put up his resume, and no calls, no responses. And he started taking out elements of his resume. And when he removed his picture, which showed him as a white guy, and removed his male, M-A-L-E, and removed his age, all of a sudden he was flooded with inquiries. Like 200 that day. So if you don't think we're being coached, you might want to rethink that, right? And this is where, and this thing says it speeds hiring, and it even monitors facial expressions, asks everybody the same questions. Now, if you're committed to diversity, it's pretty easy. Computer takes one look at me, says he smiles too much, and his beard is way too white, meaning old and white. Although he could be black with a white beard, which I think looks really great. I should get a tan, but it doesn't help. Still stuck here. So anyway, very serious issues. Not sure exactly what to do, except Scott Adams told stories because he worked in big corporations, and he was basically told formally in letters that you can't be promoted. Scott Adams is the Dilbert creator, but he also has a master's in economics from Berkeley. So he's a very smart guy, and we exchange messages now and then. And Scott was told he will not be promoted anymore because they had a diversity initiative. And this was years ago, but it was the phone company, and it was a big bank, and a couple other ones, I think. And Scott talked about how he used to produce the reports that were based on clear metrics. And he said some of the branch offices, the managers, were clearly underperforming on the metrics, and some were clearly overperforming. And he pointed out to his manager how the metrics really had no bearing on the actual performance of the branch. It had more to do with the area they were situated in, and he wondered if he should normalize it. And the manager said, no, don't worry about it. But I want to see the numbers. And what he realized was that the manager would use the numbers if it coincided with what he wanted to do anyway. So if a manager he didn't like had poor performance, he would point to the numbers and say, see, these prove that you're no good, you're gone. And nobody could fight it. And if the manager liked the other branch manager, he'd say, you're not doing as well on these metrics, but we know you're really doing a great job, so you might want to give it some work. But it would only be disregarded if the superior felt like it. So, as long as you keep somebody in the mix, but if you get rid of that manager for cost cutting, then there is a compounded power imbalance. There's also something that this thing pointed out, and that is that there were algorithms that judges would use. I don't know where that is in here. Here, Compass software. Compass software was designed to tell judges what the likelihood of repeat offenders. So there's a person standing in front of you in a courtroom, and they're convicted of a crime. What is the likelihood that they're going to repeat that crime if you let them out on bail, or if you let them with a very low sentence, let's say maybe community service or something? And according to an investigation, it classified, it had a biased, discriminatory data set where it said that there was a higher risk 45% of the time compared with 23% for white subjects. So this stuff cuts, and this stuff can cut both ways. I read about a study that found that parole boards right before lunch almost let no one out on parole. Early in the morning when they had breakfast, lots of paroles. After lunch, lots of paroles. Right before lunch when they're hungry and grumpy, no paroles. So sometimes machine learning and data can illustrate lack of diversity. But often, diversity is actually undermined by these processes. And it could be undermined in against a particular race. If you looked at who, apparently Google is terrible about having mathematicians that aren't white men. Apparently, I don't know. But I've heard that that's the sciences, engineering scientists. I know a woman who's an engineer, and she's had a great career doing all kinds of interesting things. But she feels like that it's helped her because she lives in California. Makes sense. So it's not at all clear. This article says if you want to start on diversity, this was actually an excellent article by Kenneth Hine. He talked about what you really want to do if you want to improve diversity is improve your networks. And he said the advertising and marketing industry is pledged to diversity. But what's really the best approach is grassroots sites where talent is self-organizing around. Self-organizing means birds of a feather stick together. And ethnicity, gender, and other identifiers. Okay, so it's a bunch of native women, Brazilian women who like to work together. and probably have their coffee in the morning and have a lot of fun and talk about their kids and design fashion. There's little communities of these, and they're getting together and they're getting websites. And if you're looking for a new approach, this is a way to find them. Broader networks are great tools to expand your network. So I got some counsel that I should accept anybody's invitation on LinkedIn. And I've had very few negative examples of what happens. People will pitch you a lot and you say, no, I'm not interested. And that's pretty much the end of it. I really haven't had a lot of problems. But I get, and I have, reach out to places you don't expect. Like, for example, I watched big pieces of the DNC convention, which gives me diversity and perspective. And I watched more of the RNC convention than I ever expected. But it was, this guy from Cuba who'd immigrated. It was a guy whose grandfather had picked cotton, dropped out of grade school, and now he's a senator. I didn't know that. I never saw that guy before. I saw a guy who was a lifelong Democrat and decided that he'd been taken advantage. He was in a legislator in the Georgia Senate. There were two young Hispanic girls whose dad was a beekeeper, and their mom was from Guatemala. It was a really great story. So, and it was about people who'd benefited from the opportunity of America. And, it was really, really fun to watch. And I'm not saying everybody's benefited, but it was great to see people whose parents had risked their lives to make their lives better or worked really hard. And maybe it didn't really get them the full American dream, but maybe their grandkids got it. And that's why people love the opportunity here. We can't guarantee equal outcomes. I think it's a great mistake to say we have to have equal men and women in every job. I don't think women want that. 90% of work-related deaths are male. Women are too smart for that. Don't force it. We celebrated the 100th anniversary of women voting. 70% of women at the time were opposed to it. Did you know that? Apparently they actually liked what they did. So, the world is more complicated than you think. Go to church. My church, I was on a Zoom meeting for, like an hour and a half last night. And boy, I'll tell you, we got diversity there. We got real diversity. And you have to be nice and you have to listen. And so I hope I listened enough. I finally said something at the end and my wife said, "Why did you say that? It sounded so terrible." I waited till the end. Anyway, well, you know what I'm like. So anyway, expand your network and work together and learn from each other. The greatest underutilized resource in the world is different opinions and different perspectives. So have a great day. Like and share. Your friends will know you're smart. Bye-bye.